Great evening, everyone. Thank you so very much for joining us again on another exciting Upgrade Mastery just for you. How are you doing? How was your week? What did you do this week? What were the things that stood out for you? What were the challenges you faced? And what were the lessons you also learned this week? I'm super excited to have you join us again on another exciting Upgrade Mastery just for you. Yes, it's just for you. It's about you. So, how are you doing? What's up with you? What are the new things happening in your space? What are the new victories you've had? Or what are even the new challenges you are facing, right? How are you doing basically, right? How you doing? How you doing? How's everything with you? How are you holding up? How are you pushing boundaries daily? How are you making progress? So this is the upgrade mastery just for you. And like you know, we do this every Fridays from 7 p.m. to the 8 p.m. And we basically just get to have fun, right? We get to let our head down. We get to go over our week, what the things that happened for us during the week, challenges we face, what stood out for us, and everything that happened within the week. So we just the time for us to reflect and just chill, right? So that's why we get to do this every Friday. So how are you doing? How are you doing? What's up with you? What are the challenges you may be facing? What are the difficulties? What are the things that have stood out for you in the whole of the week, like the high point for you, the low point? What's the week like for you? For me, the week has been quite up and down, right? Challenges, difficulties. Yeah, trying to move things around, but we're glad that we are done now and then we are making progress, right? Okay, so how are you doing? How's your week? In one word, if you could summarize your week in one word, what would that word be for you? I think mine would be um, eventful, right? Eventful. So many things happened. So many amazing things happened during the week, but it's all good. We're here now, right? So what's up with you? How you doing? Feel free to share this with your friends, your families, your loved ones. Let them be part of this conversation. It's always fun while we do this, right? It's always fun why we get to do this. And most importantly, sharing this with them is one way to let them know you care about their own growth and their own improvement, right? So this week, yeah, event for this week, we did a little bit of a website kind of thing, and it's quite fun. I'll probably put the link on this video so you can get to check it out and tell me what you think about it, right? We just want to do something that we can help push the brand even more, what we're doing, and get more people to know what we're doing and all of that. So that's how the week has been for us. How's the week been for you? What has the week been like for you from Sunday through today? Right? What has the week been like for you? What were the things that would make you feel like, it didn't go too well for me this week, right? Well, it's all good. This is the weekend, and this is another time to look at the things that have happened, make your amendments, make your necessary adjustments, and then move on to the new week, right? Because there's no need crying over spilled milk, right? Okay, that being said, let's move on. On the upgrade mastery just for you, we get to take feedback of our belief system that we do all through the week. So this week we had an amazing belief system session that we did, and it was quite fun because we just took it up a notch, and it was something I can't wait to share with you. So I'll just give you a few review of the belief system, and then we'll get into our conversation for today. Conversation for today is quite interesting. It's called your practice. Now, why are we talking about your practice? Because we want you to pay attention to the things that you actually practice. We often say here that the proof of learning is practice, right? The proof of learning is practice. So you need to pay attention to the things that have become your practice, the things that you always do, right? Those things have become your practice. So you have to pay attention to your practice, right? And I will tell you more about that on this conversation. So stick around till the end. Don't go anywhere. All you should be doing now is getting your pen, your paper, and inviting your friends by sharing the link. That's what you should be doing right now. And take your comfy position because this is going to be fun. And get ready to ask your questions, right? It's one of the things that we get to do here is take questions. And I love taking questions. In fact, I wish we could have a session where it's just only strictly questions. But that would be on you because sometimes people are too shy to ask questions. And I don't know why. But sometimes people are too shy to ask questions. I don't get to see you yet, but I can see your name and your picture is on your YouTube channel, though, so I could see that. But I don't get to know you, so you can ask a question. You can even be anonymous and just ask the question, right? Because when you ask questions, you get to get clarification and you get to learn more, right? So feel free to ask a question at any time. It's always interesting to take questions. So let's get into the review for today. If you're excited and you're here, let me see some fire in the comments so I know that you're here so I can continue. Your fire will help me to know that you're anticipating what's coming. So let me see some fire in the comment section so I know that you're here. And if you've invited your friends, please let me also know that you've invited your friends. Go and put it in their faces right now. Tell them to join. Tell them they are doing giveaway of knowledge right now, that they have to come here so they can learn and become better for themselves. So let me see your fires in the comment section so I can make progress with this, right? So our belief system section for the week, we started out by talking about push boundaries. Now, one of the reasons why we went into this conversation because we feel sometimes some people don't push boundaries. They are just okay where they are. And sometimes that really can become limiting for you. So you must learn to push boundaries because you have no idea what awaits you on the other side. You know, they say the treasure you seek is in the cave that you fear to enter. So you must learn to push boundaries. So we had that conversation on push boundaries. And we said one of the best things you can do for yourself is to have the discipline and the tenacity to push boundaries. The discipline and the tenacity to push boundaries said in the ancient text, it happened that the four lepers who were sitting outside the city gate, they said to each other, why sit we here and die? Remember that story? Why sit we here and die? So let's take the chance and go to the camp. And if they throw us out, then that's it. If they receive us, we'll leave. If they kill us, we'll die. We got nothing to lose, right? That decision changed everything for them. Remember that story? Why sit we here and die, right? You see, that decision helped them to experience the supernatural because as they walked to the enemy's camp, their feet began to sound like a marching army, and the enemies heard that and they fled, which made the prophecy of Elijah by this time tomorrow to come to pass because four guys decided to push boundaries. So when you push boundaries, you open yourself up for the possibilities and opportunities. You see, three simple reasons why you should push boundaries. Number one, you're not settling for less. The reason why you should push boundaries is because you're not settling for less. Number two, you are refining your value. So as you push boundaries, you're knowing more about yourself, you're getting better with yourself, you're refining your value. Number three, you are making progress. Right? You're making progress. So another reason why, these are three reasons why you should push boundaries. Number one, you're not settling for less. Number two, you're refining your value. And number three, you're making progress. Now see these guys. You refuse to maintain the status quo when you are intentionally pushing boundaries. So when you are pushing boundaries, you are not holding on to the status quo, you are changing things, right? So you refuse to maintain status quo when you intentionally push boundaries. Also, push boundaries simply because there's always more to do, to be, and to have. Right? There's always more to be, to do, and to have. So that's why you must push boundaries because there's always more. Like our mantra says here, there is always more on the opposite side of life. So why you should put boundaries? It's because there's always more. That's why you should push boundaries. And you see, sometimes you have no idea the possibilities and the opportunities that await you when you push boundaries. Like those four lepers that said to themselves, "Why sit we here and die?" They didn't know what await them till they push boundaries. And you see, always put yourself in the situation that enables and encourages you to push boundaries. Put yourself in that situation that helps you push boundaries. Very important for you. And we wrapped up that conversation by talking about you are not truly making progress if you are not pushing boundaries. That's the truth. You are not truly making progress if you are not pushing boundaries. So you must be pushing boundaries. Just push boundaries. Do a little more. Do a little more. Go the extra mile. That's how you're pushing boundaries, right? And that should be one of your practice. Now we're going to talk about your practice. One of the practices you have is that you push boundaries. Very, very important. So we went from that conversation on push boundaries, went to the next thing for the week, and we talked about observe and learn. Observe and learn. Why do we need to talk about observe and learn? I'll tell you why. You see, there are things that give you common sense when you decide to observe and learn. I'll say that again. There are things that gives you common sense when you decide to observe and learn. You see, there are so many things around you that you can simply just observe and learn from. So many things. Like they say, success leaves clues. So many clues, so many things happening around you that you can just easily pick clues from if you observe and learn. You see, in the ancient text, when the Israelites were plagued with the serpent in the camp, and Moses asked God what he should do, and God told him to make a brazen serpent, hang on a pole, and put in the middle of the camp, and anyone who looked up to the brazen serpent, even though they were beaten already by the serpent, they would leave. So you see, others in the camp quickly observed and learned that they only needed to look up to the brazen serpent that was in the middle of the camp, and they would survive. You see, as weird as this may sound, life becomes easy when you take out time to just observe and learn. You save yourself from needless suffering when you just observe and learn from what's happening around you. You know, right now in Nigeria, many banks are selling shares, and people are saying, "Oh, get bank shares, get bank shares." But if you observe and learn, people who have bought bank shares in the past, what has been the remark from such people? So don't just take your money and say, "Oh, I'm going to get bank shares." Observe and learn what has happened in the past to know if it's the wise thing to do. I'm not saying don't get bank shares, by all means, get bank shares. But always remember that when people are trying to push something at your face for you to do, there's always something behind it. Just observe and learn. That's all I'm saying. Just observe and learn. Now, three simple reasons to observe and learn. Number one, behavior has patterns. Every behavior has a pattern. So observe and learn. Simply, right? Behavior has pattern. Observe and learn. Don't get yourself caught up in any mix. Just observe and learn because behavior has patterns. Right? Number two, success leaves clues. Right? For anyone who's successful, there are clues. They've left, right? Success leaves clues. So observe and learn. Number three, support cannot be hidden. If people truly support you, you will see it. So observe and learn. People who claim to support you, just observe and learn. You know who truly got you and who don't get you, right? Observe and learn. Because support cannot be hidden. You can't tell me you support me. You never show up for my life. You never comment. You never share. How do you support me? Observe and learn, right? Simple as that. So you see, when you observe and learn, you will hardly ever be caught by surprise because you see it coming, right? You see it coming. So you can never be caught by surprise. It won't take you by surprise. You can't be shocked, right? If you observe and learn, I would be shocked that you are shocked because you observe and learn. You just observe. So when you observe and learn, you cannot be caught by surprise. Nothing catches you by surprise. You see, don't ignore those who showed you their true colors, and don't try to repent them either. Observe and learn. Behavior has patterns. I always say that behavior has patterns. Observe and learn. Don't ignore those who have shown you their true colors, and don't try to repent them either. Just observe and learn. You know, I've always told us this: once is a mistake, twice is a choice, thrice is a pattern. Just observe and learn. It will save you a ton of heartaches and headache when you observe and learn. Remember, observe and learn, it is always for your benefit because it makes you wiser. It just makes you wiser. You know, it just gives you common sense when you observe and learn. And you see, your failure to observe and learn will put you in so many avoidable situations. Just from your failure to observe and learn will put you in so many avoidable situations. Now, remember this: actions prove why words mean nothing. When you intentionally observe and learn, you will always see that actions prove why words mean nothing. So, observe and learn. Don't take it personal. Just observe and learn. Now, moving on from that conversation, I went into something quite unique, which we call understand the game. You see, life is a game. Guys, believe it or not, life is a game. There's this game called life, and you're a player in the game. So you need to understand the game, right? Understand the game. Know the playbook for the game. You see, you can never win a game that you don't understand. Understand the game if you ever want to win. Right? You need to understand the game. I know some of you grow up playing Ludo, you grow up playing chess. You know, chess is too big for some people. You go playing Ayo, you play Ludo, you played what? The reason you play Snake and Ladders, the reason why you got good with those games, because you got to, over time, understand the game. So you could easily win because you understand the game. Also, in the game of life, to win, you need to understand the game. Right? You need to understand the game, understand the rules of the game. Now, in the ancient text, the rabbi definitely understood the game. When the devil came to him to tempt him, he understood that the thief comes but to steal, to kill, and to destroy. He understood the game. So he didn't fall for it. You see, you must understand the game. You know, no game is played alone. You need supporters. That's why the rabbi also got disciples, because he understood the game. Right? Even God said, let us make man. He understood the game. See, three simple reasons why you need to understand the game. Number one, for preparation. Understanding the game helps for your preparation. Number two, your mindfulness. You know, everywhere now is all about demure. You're very demure, mindful, very cutesy, right? You know, one of the things that show you understand the game is that you become mindful. You allow only the right things to be in your mind, because for you to be mindful means your mind is full. And you must allow your mind to be full with only the right things. And that's why they say it's very demure, very mindful. Because you understand the game. So you have to be mindful. Right? You have to be mindful. And also you learn to celebrate your wins. A win is a win, guys. You must learn to celebrate your win because you understand the game. Right? Now, understanding the game of life doesn't mean you will never face challenges or setbacks. It just means that when you do, you'll be better equipped to handle them. Right? And you see, You approach situations with the sense of calm and confidence, knowing that you have the knowledge, preparation, and support to succeed. Right? You approach situations with calm, confidence, knowing that you have the knowledge, the preparation, and the support to succeed because you understand the game, right? Understand the game. You see, when you understand the game, you don't panic. You embrace the journey, you learn continuously, you stay focused, and you believe in yourself because you understand the game. And see, the game of life is yours to play and win. To understand the game and play to win. It's as simple as that. And see these guys, when you understand the game, you will never be caught off guard in any situation because you understand the game. You will never be caught off guard because you understand the game. Right? So move on from that conversation. I will talk about something I love during the week, which is get back to work. Get back to work. Now, why I love this is because a lot of people are getting tired of their work. They're becoming complacent of their work. And that's why this conversation today on your practice is very, very timely because people need to get back to work. And we said in the conversation on get back to work, we said just the knowledge that no one is coming to save you inspires you to get back to work. Now, this thing of you are your own rescue, no one's coming to save you, something I've been saying for a long time now. And interestingly, Apostle Femi Lazarus is also saying the same thing right now. Like, no one's coming to help you. You are your own rescue. Get back to work, right? Get back to work. No one's coming to help you. Because the truth is this: as long as you keep thinking there's someone who's coming from somewhere to help you, you're always going to be laid back. You're always going to be waiting for that person to come. You see, your divine helper is also looking for a divine helper. Are you getting this? The person you're looking up to help you is also looking up to someone to help him. So don't put your life in that phase where you don't get back to work because they are waiting for someone to come and rescue you. No, you are your own rescue. Save yourself. Get back to work, guys. Get back to work. Save yourself. All right? You understand the game that no one is coming, so save yourself. You see, in the ancient text, the rabbi reminded us that you must work while it is day, for night cometh when no man can work. John chapter 9, verse 4. Get back to work. Get back to work. You see, you must know this. You must know this. No one is coming. No one is coming to help you. Get back to work. 3 simple reasons why you should get back to work. Number 1, no one is coming to save you. No one is coming. Number 2, you are inexcusable. You have no excuse. You have no excuse, so get back to work. And number 3, you can upgrade. So get back to work and improve yourself. You see, get back to work because you can literally be more, do more, and have more. Like literally, you can be more, do more, and have more. And that is only possible when you get back to work. Also, until you get back to work, you will keep blaming others for your lot in life. You keep blaming others. Oh, because of my mother, because of my father, because of my parents, because you keep blaming others. Get back to work. Take responsibility for your life. You see, when you get back to work, you have succeeded in taking responsibility for your life and the outcomes. It's your life. Take responsibility for it. And finally, don't make excuses. Just pick yourself up from where you are now and develop the discipline to get back to work. No excuses. No excuses. Just use it. Get back to work. And finally, we wrapped up that conversation and we said, no one is coming to save you. Get back to work and become all that you can be. That's it. No one is coming. No one is coming. Get back to work. And then we wrapped up the conversations by talking about help yourself. Now, this was a very good way to end the week after talking about get back to work because you need to help yourself. And there's this saying back in the day is not scriptural, but it was out there like heaven help those who help themselves. It's not scriptural in any way. But the truth is this: help yourself. And I'm going to explain why I say help yourself. Because first, I've told you get back to work. One way to help yourself is to get back to work. And I said here, before you resort to learned helplessness, have you done enough to actually help yourself? Learned helplessness is a state where you feel, because you failed before, you keep failing. Then you have now learned helplessness because you've gone through setbacks before. You feel like you always go through setbacks. Now you have learned helplessness, right? So I said, before you learn helplessness, have you done enough to actually help yourself? Have you done enough to actually help yourself? And I said here, in the ancient text, when David was greatly depressed, you see that in 1 Samuel chapter 30, from verse 5, 6, 7, right? When they have captured his wife, his family, and that of his men, and then David was in distress, he was crying. They cried that they had no strength in them to cry anymore. They wanted to stone David to death. But David encouraged himself in the Lord. He got back to work. He asked that the priest bring the ephah, and he had to inquire of God what to do, and God told him to pursue, overtake, and recover all. That was David helping himself. That was David helping himself. 3 simple reasons for you to help yourself. Number one, nobody's coming to help you. Just like we said earlier, nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's coming to help you. Help yourself. Number two, helping others is the way to help yourself. So don't just stop at helping yourself. Also help others. That's one way to help yourself, because helping others help you to help yourself from being selfish and self-centered. So helping others help yourself. Did you get that? Easy. Number three, it shows that you're taking responsibility for your life. You have to take responsibility for your life. It's your life. It is your life. You cannot blame anyone for the outcome of your life. It is your life. Right? Now, no one will ever help you more than you are willing to help yourself. No one will ever help you more than you are willing to help yourself. So help yourself. Also, pity. I love this one. Pity is not a strategy. Help yourself and stop waiting for people to pity you. They will know now, just pity me now, pity me. Pity is not a strategy. Help yourself. Help yourself. You see, those who will eventually come to help you must have seen that you take the responsibility to help yourself. People who will come to help you, they must see that you're taking responsibility to help yourself. Life is not Nollywood, though. Don't feel like if nobody help you, then tomorrow in the future you'll become great. See, if you don't help yourself, you will still not become great in the future of tomorrow. It's not Hollywood. Help yourself. Help yourself. You see, don't get angry when people don't help you. Take up the challenge to help yourself instead. Don't get angry when people don't help you. Don't get angry. Just take up the challenge to help yourself. Right? Take up challenge to help yourself. Nollywood have really spoiled people a lot, made them believe that, if people don't help you now, when you become something in the future, they're going to regret not helping you. See, it's when you help yourself to be something that they will regret not helping you. If you don't become anything, they will be glad that they did not help you because they will think that they dodged the bullet. So help yourself. Pity is not a strategy. Help yourself. Help yourself. Don't get angry when people don't help you. Take up the challenge to help yourself. And we said, when you fail to help yourself, how do you even expect people to succeed to help you? Ironic, isn't it? Right? When you fail to help yourself, How do you expect people to succeed to help you? So that's where we wrapped up the review for the week. And like I always tell you, please always go back to Instagram at Dr. Upgrade and get the full gist from the reviews. This is just review. Like go read the full article so you have a full understanding, right? Don't just take up these bites, bites, bites. You know, we live in a world of everything bite, bite, bite. No, take the full loaf. Don't just take the crumbs. Take the full loaf. That's where you get the real juice of this conversation. Now, let's talk about your practice, right? So, here we're going to talk about your practice today. So, let's talk about your practice. Now, let's get into your practice. You know, today is going to be quite interesting because I'm just going to really lay down some things before you to let you see some things that you probably ignore. Right. So when we talk about your practice, what do you think we talk about? What do we think you talk about? So let me take a few feedback before we continue. Thank you for the fires. Thank you so much. You said earlier, push boundaries because there is always more. Exactly. There's always more on the upgrade side of life. Support is not hidden. In fact, this one, I have seen this one over and over again. Support is not hidden at all. It is not. I think you can hide. Support, you can't hide it. Right? Thank you so much for that. You said, take responsibility for your life. No one is coming to save you. So true. No one is coming. No one is coming. And finally, I love this. PT is not a strategy. It is not, right? It is not a strategy. Stop feeling, oh, they must pity me. No, it is not a strategy. Let's get to your practice. What are some of the things that you practice? You know, when we're talking about practice, simply put, we're talking about the things that you have discovered that works for you. You know, if you follow the things that I do, like my teachings, the lives, the belief system, the podcast, the things that we do, you always hear me say this, that the proof of learning is practice, and the proof of practice is results. Now, when we talk about your practice, now these are things that you have done over the years or over time that you have come to discover that it works for you. So these are the things that we say are your practice. Now, these are not things that you have copied from people. Yes, you can learn from people. Yes, no doubt. You can learn from people. You can be inspired by people, right? But there are things that you have come to know that you practice that works for you. I don't know if this is making sense. So when we talk about your practice, we are saying, what are those things that you know that you do that works for you? It may not work for somebody else, but you know it works for you. That is the essence of the conversation of your practice. And the essence of this is so that you stick with your practice. Is this making sense? You need to stick with your practice. Now, when you know that this works for you, stick with it. So I'll give you an example, right? Those of you while you were still in school, you know, life is a school itself, but some people only consider school when they are within the four walls of school, right? When you were in school as a student, let's use that analogy, you knew what worked for you if you were a good student, right? It's just that if you're a student that didn't have sense, sorry. If you're a student that didn't have sense, then you won't know what works for you. But as a student, in your first year, let's say it's up and down, but by your second year, you know what works for you as regards your learning. You know what best time to read, you know what best space to take up in the library to read, you know what best hours to read, you know how to schedule your timetable to read, you know whether it's a study group that works best for you, you know whether it's a tutorial session that works best for you. So you know what works for you as regards your study. Now that becomes your practice. So while a lot of people may be doing other things, because you already know what works, that now becomes your practice. Why people may be doing all night reading? Because you discovered that all night doesn't work for you. All night is no longer a practice that you do. Is this making sense? Now, this is the whole essence of practice. You know what works for you. For some people, what works for them is texting. They don't like to spend time on calls. For me, I haven't said this much, but for me, I really don't like taking calls. You know why? Because I feel I spend so much energy when I'm taking calls because I have to talk, I have to communicate, I have to think, right? So I rather prefer to text because it's easier for me to do other things while texting, and I can still work better while I'm texting compared to when I'm on the call. So when I'm on the call, I can't do so much because I'm already on the call. So my mind is on the call, listening, thinking of what to say next. So calling doesn't really work for me. That's my practice. But texting, I'm good, right? I can text from one country to the next. Be on the flight, I can text all through, right? If the Wi-Fi is on, I can text all through being on the flight, right? I can text all through on the journey, right? That's me. But I can't make calls like that. That's my practice. I know what works for me. Is it making sense? So you need to understand this about yourself. Now, you cannot be a human being or an adult and you don't know what works for you. You don't know your practice. You see, there are people who they are good at waking up as early as 4 a.m. You have their activities scheduled for the day from 4 a.m. They do their prayers, they do their devotion, they do their study, they do all of those things before 6 to get ready for the day. That's what works for them. That's their practice. The question now is this: what is your practice? What have you discovered that works for you? Now, if you haven't discovered what works for you, good. It just means that you need to now learn to pay more attention to yourself and the things that you do, right? Because you can't copy your practice from another person. Now, we live in a country where we are so high on copy. Anything that we see someone else do, we want to do. Right now, the trend of the day is demure, right? Kitsy, it's very mindful, very demure. Now, the person who did the demure, that was her practice. But now everybody is copying that because we are good at copying. Even though it doesn't work for us, but as long as it's trending, we copy it. So everyone is going around. This week it has been demure, 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 demure. Practice knows what works for you. What's your practice? What's your practice? We need to literally stop being high on copy, and we are high on copy, we are low on content, on authenticity. We are very low on it. Once we see what somebody did, something that is working for them, we want to copy that. What's your practice? That's the whole idea of this conversation. We need to go back and be more reflective. What works for me? Like, what works for me? What do I do that I know I get the most result from? Talk about Pareto principle 80-20. What do I do that I get the most result from? What is my practice? How do I relate? How do I get the most engagement? How do I get people to relate more with me? What are the things I do that are unique to me? What are my practice? You can't copy practice. It may work for someone, is no guarantee it works for you. That's the truth. So what are your practice? And we are saying you need to know your practice. Now, there's a few things about your practice that you need to know, right? Before I get into practice itself, right? Because I really will touch on practice because there's so much on practice that you need to know, right? Now, let's look at your practice, right? Some of the things, some areas that should be your practice. Now, I've singled out 5 areas that should be your practice. 5. Remember, I said it's not copying somebody else, but you can look at these areas and pick, okay, I think this should be my practice. But it's not copying, it's just learning from it. Number 1 practice that you should have, right? One of your practice should be the fact that you are spiritual. And by spiritual, I talk to you about prayers, God's word, fellowship, spiritual. Because see, whether you believe it or not, life is spiritual, right? So you must have a practice of spirituality. Life is spiritual, right? I'm not saying, oh, you need to fast for 40 days, you need to fast 21 days dry. No, no, no. You just need to be spiritual because life is spiritual. Whether you believe it or not is irrelevant. I've always said that. Life is spiritual. Whether you believe it or not is irrelevant. So the first among the things that should be your practice is that you should be spiritual. So you should have the time you pray, have the time you study, have the time you fellowship. That's your practice, right? You must have your own practice. Is it audio Bible that works for you? Is it Bible quotes that works for you? Is it reading the Bible literally that works for you? What is your practice? Praying, is it during the prayer time, during morning devotions, or prayer time when you join any of the online prayer programs and all of that? What is your practice? You must know what works for you. You must know what works for you. What's your fellowship? You must know what works for you. Right? So when it comes to spirituality, you must have your practice and know what works for you. It's as simple as ABCD. That's simple. So the first thing, what's your practice when it comes to spirituality? What's your practice? I'm not saying you are speaking Christianese. I'm saying what's your practice as a believer? What's your practice? There are some people who have a practice to fast once in a week. That's their practice. Some people have the practice to read a chapter of the Bible every day. That's their practice. The people who spend at least 30 minutes in prayers, that's their practice. What is your practice as regarding spirituality? What is your practice? You can't copy someone else's practice. It has to be your own practice because you know that this works for you. Right? Is this making sense? This works for you. So it has to be your practice. It's not our practice, it's your practice. Because at the end of the day, what may work for me may not work for you. That's why it's your practice. That's why you have to sit with yourself and observe. Remember, I said observe and learn and know what works for you. You unlock the code and know, oh, wow, this works for me. That's my practice moving forward. You just know. The first, like I said, your spirituality. The next area of your practice should be the practice of honor. Now, we are in a world where people easily dishonor people. They burn bridges, they don't care, they just treat people anyhow. No, that should not be your practice. You must have the practice of honor. And I've always said this, you don't treat people with honor because they are honorable. You treat them with honor because you are honorable. That should be your practice. The practice of honor. That should be your practice. The practice of honor that regardless of where you find yourself or whoever you interact with, you will always treat them with honor. Whether they deserve it or not is not the concern. What is important is that you treat them with honor because that's who you are. So that should be your practice, the practice of honor. Even scripture says, honor your father and your mother so that your days will be long, because that's a covenant, that's the commandment with a promise. But your father and your mother is not necessarily your biological parents. They're people that you have over you. Honor them. Honor them. Whether they're deserving of honor or not, honor them. That should be your practice. You know, you hear people say, oh, no, if they don't honor me, I won't honor them back. No, 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 no. That's a wrong practice. In fact, that is malpractice. That's the wrong practice. You must honor people. You don't have to deserve it for you to honor them. That's because honor is your practice. Honor is your practice. See, honor will always open doors for you. Dishonor will shut towards you. Never forget that. Never forget that. Honor will open doors for you that dishonor will shut towards you. So have a practice of honor. So the first practice, the practice of spirituality. The next practice, the practice of honor. The practice of honor. The third practice is the practice of giving. You know that old song? Give, it shall be given unto you. Good measure shaking together and running over, running over. See, you must have the practice of giving. I've always said this and I'll say it again. It is not the rich that give, it is givers that give. You must have the practice of giving. And let me tell you, you get more when you give more. I'll say that again. You get more when you give more. You must have the practice of giving. Give your time, give your talent, give your treasure. Have the practice of giving. When you get to a place, you should look out for how can I give? How can I give? Have the practice of giving. Don't have the practice to get all you can and count all you get. No, don't have that practice. Your practice should be one of giving. How can I give? How can I give? What can I give? Have a practice of giving. It's a practice that you need to have, a practice of giving. Right? So we said the practice one, spirituality. Practice two, honor. Practice three, giving. Giving. Have the practice of giving. And you know, when it comes to giving, I always tell people this, that you give from the perspective of the giver, not from the perspective of the receiver. Right? I'll say that again. You give from the perspective of the giver, not the perspective of the receiver. So you give from who you are, not looking at the person you're giving. And I always use the story of Alexander the Great. I was taking a walk with one of his army generals and he saw a beggar. Now the beggar was begging for alms, right? And Alexander the Great told his army general that was with him and told him to give the beggar a gold coin. So when they left, continued their work, and the army general couldn't get it. They were like, wow. And he said to Alexander the Great, like, I observed earlier that when we met the beggar, you instructed I give him a gold coin and not a silver coin or a copper coin. And Alexander the Great told him that it will never be said of Alexander the Great that he gave someone a silver coin or a copper coin. Why? Because he was giving in the capacity of who he was as Alexander the Great and not in the capacity of the beggar. So that's why I've always said this. Give in the capacity of the giver, not in the capacity of the receiver. So don't look at who's receiving it to give it. Look at yourself who is giving it to give it. That's your practice of giving. That's the practice of giving. The third practice is the practice of forgiving. Now, I know this one is going to be quite hard, but that's why it's your practice. The practice of forgiving. Because see these guys, you must learn to forgive people even without an apology. You know why? Because some people would rather die than apologize. So why hold on to the hurt and the grievance when you can give them forgiveness even when they don't deserve it. And this is why it has to be your practice. You have to be the one who be the bigger person all the time, to forgive even without an apology, to forgive even without them being remorseful, to forgive even without them being sorry. You forgive. Why? Because you have come to make it your practice. People abuse this? Yes. Will you take advantage of it? Yes. Should it be your practice? Yes. The practice of forgiving. So because then you always live free. No hate, no grudge. Always live free. Because you have a practice of forgiving. Is it easy? No, it's not. Is it worth it? Yes, it is. To have the practice of forgiving. And the fifth practice you should have, and that's where I'll stop, is the practice of loving. The practice of loving. You know, scripture reminds us that if you only love those who love you, you're not different from the unbeliever. You're not different from the if you only love those who love you, you're not different from the unbeliever. You're not different from the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the scribes, right? But you must learn to love those who don't love you. Pray for those who despitefully use you. Man, that's deep. You must have the practice of loving. The practice of loving. You love people beyond their faults, beyond their flaws, beyond their mistakes, beyond their shortcomings. You still love them. See, one of the cravings that people have is to feel loved, to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel loved. And you should make it your practice to love, regardless of their shortcomings. You know, scripture reminds us that herewith is the love of God made manifest to us, in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. That's love. That's the practice of loving. You too have a practice of loving. When you love people beyond their flaws, beyond their faults, beyond their shortcomings, beyond their now. Because loving people is letting them know you believe in them and you want to see the best in them. And so you love them. So these are 5 practices that should be your practice. The practice of spirituality, prayers, study of the word, fellowship, the practice of honor, the practice of giving, the practice of forgiving, and the practice of loving. This should be your practice. Now let's quickly look at practice itself, right? Practice. Practice. Practice, right? Practice. Now, you know, the P in practice talks about your principles. The things that you hold there that you will not compromise for anything, your principles. So, what are your practice? We're talking about your principles, right? The arrow talks about your responsibilities. And that's what I talked about earlier, those 5 areas: your spirituality, your honor, giving, forgiving, loving. Those 5, right? This is how you now practice it, right? 1, the P talks about your principles in practice. The R talks about your availability in practice. The C talks about your consistency, right? The T talks about your truth. Truth. The I talks about intentionality. The C talks about your character. And the E talks about your excellence. Now, this is your practice. I will tell you the 5 things that we believe that you should go and practice. And they are your spirituality, your honor, your giving, your forgiving, and your loving. 5 that should go and allow that to be your practice. This makes sense. Has this been worth your while? I would have loved to dwell more on the practice itself, but the goal here for this conversation is actually to talk about the 5 areas that we want you to go and allow to be your practice moving forward. Your spirituality, right? Your honor, your giving, your forgiving, and your loving. This should be your practice, regardless of where you find yourself anywhere in the world. This should be your practice. So, guys, let's take a few questions, right? I want to take a few questions before we call it a wrap for today. Let's take a few questions. Let's take a few questions on your practice. So also tell me some of your practice that you do before now that you know works for you, right? Also share with me. I've shared with you my practice. I've shared with you what I believe you should also practice. But also you tell me what are some practices or your practice that you currently do that you see works for you right now, even before this conversation. What are the things that you practice that works for you? Tell me about it. Right, tell me about it while you wait to take your question. So you do 2 things. Tell me about the practice that works for you, and also ask your questions on your practice, because this is very important for us at this time. We need to get back to doing what we know work for us. Right? This is not an era where you try to do what everyone else is doing. No. Is it working for you? If it's not, don't even try it. Stick with what works for you. Right? As much as we want to generalize things, it's still best when you personalize things. And when it comes to your practice, it has to be personalized. Your practice is never generalized, it's personalized, right? Even these 5 areas I talked about, you will still practice them in a way that best works for you, right? You practice them the way that best works for you, just the same way. Not everybody loves jollof rice. There are people who would love coconut rice. People will love banga rice. People will just love rice and stew. There are people who will love jollof rice, but it is still rice. I get it. So the same thing about practice. Now, these 5 I mentioned are things that you should pay attention to, but you will still practice it in a way that it works for you. Is this making sense? So tell me some of your practice that you've observed before now that actually works for you, that you have used in your life, and you're like, oh, because the goal of this is for you to continue to use your practice and not abandon it to go and try something else. This is not the time of your life to be doing try and error. Oh, somebody is doing so, let me try that. No, no, no. Stick with what works for you. That is your practice. Stick with it. This is not an era of copy and paste. No. Stick with your practice. It works for you. Stick with it. Stick with it. Right? The same way, the way God will speak to you is not the way He will speak to me. Stick with your practice. Because you are a unique human. You have your unique DNA, your unique fingerprint, your unique iris. Stick to your unique practice. What works for you? That's it, basically. What works for you? It may work for someone else. It's no guarantee it will work for you. And it may work for you. It's no guarantee it will work for someone else. So let people learn to stick with their practice. Does this make sense? I know it does. Okay, so let's take your questions, right? Let's take your questions before we call it a wrap for today. Like I said, share with me the practice that works for you, and also you can ask your question on your practice. Just tie this up. Right? Someone says that practice forgiving people without an apology. Beautiful. Beautiful. That's the practice that works, right? Practice forgiving people without an apology, because some people will not apologize. They will go to their grave without them apologizing to you. People are like that. Thank you so much for that, Lima. Some people will rather die than apologize. So which means you never will get the apology. So learn to forgive without an apology. And that's a good practice there. That's a good practice. That's a good place to clap. Oh my God, I miss being in a training hall. I can't wait to get back to a training hall, right? That's the point. That's a good place to clap so that the audience in the room will applaud the feedback. That's a beautiful practice. Practicing forgiving without an apology. Because sometimes some of these people should even apologize, they are now dead. How do you get the apology? Do you go to wake them up from the dead to come and apologize? So you have to move on. You have to move on. So you must learn to practice forgiving, and that entails letting people go even without getting, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I'll make it up to you. What can I do to make it right? And all of those apology language. Learn to forgive without an apology. Right? Tell me, tell me more. Share. Someone else share with me your practice. What else do you practice before now? You see, this conversation is really apt and timely because we need to just stick with our practice. Stick with what works for you. Literally, stick with what works for you. Like they say, do you. And one best way to do you is with your practice. And I've told you the 5 key areas I expect you to practice: your spirituality, your honor, your giving, your forgiving, your loving. 5 key areas that should be your practice. And do it the way it best represents you. Don't copy someone else. And I love that feedback. I practice forgiving without an apology. Beautiful. Beautiful. So, someone else, or more feedback or questions before we call this a wrap for today. You guys have been amazing. You guys have been amazing. Like I always say, please do well to help your friends. Share this link with them so they can learn and be better for themselves. You have no idea what you're doing for them when you share this with them. You have no idea how you're helping them. So share this with them. This should be your practice too, right? This should be part of your giving practice. Sharing this with them, part of your giving practice. You're giving them value. And you're giving them value at no cost whatsoever. So feel free to share this. It's part of your practice, right? It's part of your giving. Okay, so more questions, more feedback. More questions, more feedback before we call this a wrap for today. Thank you guys for being here. Super grateful for you guys being here. You guys are amazing. You have no idea. Just being here with you is always just fun. It's always just amazing. Always just amazing to share knowledge, to learn from you too, from your feedback. It's just phenomenal, right? Thank you so much. So, questions, feedback before we call this a wrap for today. Right? 5 key areas are areas I want you to go back and look at yourself and do more with those areas, with your spirituality, with your honor, with your giving, with your forgiving, and with your loving. You guys need to do more. Let that be your practice. And let that be the things that you practice year in, year out, day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out, right? Let that be your practice. Because remember, your practice talks about your principles, your responsibilities, your availability, your consistency, your truth, your intentionality, your character, and your excellence. That's your practice. I've shown you the 5 key areas where that practice is very important. Very important. Questions, guys. Let's take questions. I'll wait for a few minutes to take questions or feedback, and then we'll call it a wrap because. Okay, so someone asked a question, very long question. It says, how do you stick to your practice when the people around you have a direct opposite as their practice? How do you help not being influenced that way? Okay, I love this question. It says, how do you stick to your practice when the people around you have the direct opposite as their practice? That's one question. Then number 2, How do you help not being influenced that way? So let's take that question. First one, how do you see your practice when the people around you have the direct opposite practice? Now, guess what? It is your practice. It is your practice. It's not our practice. It's your practice. So if the people around you have the direct opposite of your practice, stick with your practice. Stick with your practice because it's your practice. It's not our practice, right? So stick with your practice. Then the next one is, how do you help not being influenced by their practice? If you stick with yours, you will not be influenced. You get influenced when you leave yours to focus on theirs. You know, they say focus creates blindness, right? If I'm focused on my phone, focused on this phone, as you can see, if I'm focused on this phone, I probably will not see the screen because my focus is here. As you can see, I won't see the screen because my focus is here. The same thing, if you focus on your practice, you will start to no longer see their practice. The reason you are seeing their practice is because you have left focus from your practice to their practice. So put the attention on your practice. Keep being the amazing person that you are, regardless if the people around you are very unamazing. Keep being yourself. Keep practicing your practice. If they are practicing the opposite, that is them. This is you. Because also know this, you are not always going to be in that environment all your life. But if you allow them influence you, you will not take that influence to the environment you are going to. And like I told you, environment is first mental before it is physical. So somehow, as you grow yourself with your practice, you start to mentally shut out other people who are practicing something different from yours because you see it affects you negatively. So how do you do this? Number one, very simple, focus on your practice. Number two, mentally shut out the other people who are practicing the opposite. That way, that's how you deal with it. And number three, don't allow their practice to influence you. They say if you can't beat them, join them, right? But I say if you can't beat them, hire people to beat them. Don't allow their practice to influence you. So if you can leave the environment physically, leave the environment mentally. Leave the environment mentally. That's how you overcome that. Thank you so much for that question. Any other question? Any other feedback? Any other question? Any other feedback? A day is coming, we're going to just have questions all through the Friday session. No, I won't be sharing anything unique. I won't be doing reviews. I'll just be taking questions. Right? Probably plan towards that. We're supposed to do something this October. None of you sent in anybody you want me to interview or to have with me on the session. So that couldn't be possible this month. But if you really want that, let me know who you want us to have on the show and we'll bring them on the show. All right. But most importantly, also, if you want us to just have strictly questions and answer sessions for the whole hour, we can also do that. Just be taking questions. We won't need to share anything new. We'll just simply be here to take questions. So if you have any questions, just send them in. Send them in, send them in, send them in. Gather, harvest questions from people and bring them here and we'll deal with it. Right? One more question came in. Okay, feedback for that question says if you can't leave the environment physically, leave the environment mentally. So true. Right? So true. Leave the environment mentally. If you can't live physically, yes. Leave it mentally. Leave it mentally. I just think where you can learn to ignore someone from your mind, just ignore the person. So that's how you can also ignore those people who are practicing something different or something opposite to your practice. Just mentally ignore them. They may be there, but they are not there. And that's even worse when you mentally ignore someone. That's even worse because they are there, but they are not there. Right? So, guys, I think we're going to call this a wrap for today. I've had fun. I don't know about you, but I have fun. And I hope that you've learned something about your practice moving forward. And I hope that you go back and share this with your friends, your family, and even your enemies, because they too need to upgrade their practice. Okay, so like I always say, there's always more on the upgrade side of life. So I encourage you, you know what we do? Leave good behind so that you can upgrade. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you.